If my daughter is watching this right now, I would say, I love you. And come back home to your mother safely and unharmed. And I love you. And when you do return back, and if you do return back unharmed, you will never, ever go with anybody else. You will be next to my side at all times.
They say he's armed, that he's dangerous. He's wanted by the FBI. Khalil Tatum, wanted in connection with the murder of his wife. Wanted in the disappearance of 8-year-old Ralisha Rudd.
He bought my daughter a fish tank, but I stopped it there. No more gifts.
DC General needs to be, I don't know, they need to really do a really thorough background check with these workers.
Sources tell News 4 Ralisha's mom had allowed Tatum to take Ralisha weeks ago, not suspecting he would hurt her.
The minute people saw that beautiful little girl's face, there were people in DC who could think of nothing else except to find out where she was. Her picture was everywhere. Her on every TV story, on telephone poles, on everywhere. Everyone was sharing it on social media. It was the search for her was something that Washingtonians, people from this area who were living here 10 years ago, you say her name, they immediately know what you're talking about.
My relationship with Ralisha, it was good. It was like, even though she wasn't my biological child, it was like, it's hard. It's really hard, but it was special in its own way. She was a real sweetheart.
Bring her home! Bring her home!
We can no longer turn a blind eye to this issue of missing people of color around the country. 40% of the missing population are black and brown people.
It had been almost a month since she had attended classes, but sources tell us this is not the first time officials knew of problems with the little girl's family.
This family was under the supervision of Child and Family Services, so this child should not have gone missing.
Doreen, why was this guy at a D.C. hotel, and why did he have this little girl with him?
I think as we look at Ralisha's story, we can ask ourselves, okay, what other Ralishas are out there, and what am I doing to prevent this from happening?
The significance of this section of the Anacostia is that we are directly downstream from Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. That is where the search for 8-year-old Ralisha Rudd has been focused for days.
We have to continue to hold her in our collective hearts and make sure that we do everything that we can do to prevent another child from going through what she did.
The search for Ralisha Rudd resumes tomorrow morning.
Ralisha's stepfather among those speaking through tears.
I just want my baby back. Yeah, I got hope, but I'm preparing for the worst, but I'm praying for the best. I got hope. My son believes she's alive, and this is coming from her brother.
Relisha.
This is a confusing and disturbing story that spans both the district and Prince George's County. And at the center of it is an 8-year-old girl, with big, beautiful brown eyes. You can see her there.
I remember being called to a scene of a homicide in Prince George's County at a motel in mid-March of that year. And we were told by Prince George's County Police that there was a deceased woman inside there. And through the next days and weeks, we learned this astonishing story of the disappearance of this little 8-year-old girl, Ralisha Rudd.
Late this morning, a distraught man, seen here in a red jacket, identified himself to officers as Ralisha's father and spoke to them about what was going on.
So when everything hit the fan, that's when I found out that she was really missing. It was just in disbelief at that point. Like, she really missing?
Oh my God, your baby. How can you go to sleep?
Shamika told us that she was in Georgia with her teacher.
The family says Ralisha's mom always had a reason to explain why the girl wasn't around. Ralisha wasn't reported missing until Wednesday, when Payne Elementary School alerted police. Investigators say Ralisha may now be with a man named Khalil Tatum, who works at a shelter where Ralisha and her mom were living.
I want to know why Shamika telling us so many different stories about the case and not being honest.
My family had their own carpet contract, and we would get work, and we would go in and out of town, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, etc., to do hotels and people houses and Airbnbs and office buildings. You know, we had big contracts, so it would take weeks for us to do the work. So, and around the time this stuff was happening back in D.C., I was out of town. So I really didn't know what was going on until I got back home.
Linked to the girl's disappearance, this man, 51-year-old Khalil Tatum, the janitor at the homeless shelter, seen here walking down a hotel corridor with Ralisha back on February 26th after police say Ralisha's mother gave her daughter to Tatum.
He didn't look like that type of person. He looked like a good person. The way he played with everybody, kids, the way he did his job, it's all in the man's hands above us. And that's one thing that man above us don't play with, is fools and babies. And my 8-year-old daughter, she is a baby.
First, we want to tell you about a neighbor who says if he had known that little girl wasn't supposed to be there, he would have called the police. Tatum's neighbor tells News 4 he's seen the little girl at the apartment building.
I seen the little girl about 3 weeks ago. She was coming out the apartment, in and out the apartment with him and this old lady. I haven't seen him since. I ain't seen him since the other day.
Neighbor Maurice Jackson says Tatum implied the girl was his niece and said he and his wife had just returned from some type of resort with the child.
Ralisha went to Payne Elementary School, but she hadn't gone to school for weeks. And when officials got suspicious, they say janitor Tatum became Dr. Tatum. March 10th. On or about that day, Khalil Tatum, posing as a doctor, tells a city official that Ralisha's not in school because she's sick, that she has some sort of neurological disorder and she's undergoing treatment. The official says, we need some documentation of that. Dr. Tatum said he'd leave the paperwork here at the shelter. March 19th, as the investigation intensified, Khalil Tatum and his wife checked into the Red Roof Inn on Oxon Hill Road. Sources say there's no evidence Ralisha was with them at the time. March 20th, Andrea Tatum is found murdered inside that motel room. Mrs. Tatum's family believes she was killed because she tried to protect that little girl.
At this point, we do not know what, if any, type of vehicle Tatum may be driving.
So we utilized all of our resources. We, contacted our team, and we were ready to go to help find and bring her home. And we wanted to amplify her case because we knew that someone knows something, or someone would know something, and we needed to find and bring her home.
We cannot ignore the possibility that he may have killed her.
They had found video of Tatum at a local Home Depot buying a shovel and construction-sized trash bags. And so that led to the search of the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens.
The man wanted for kidnapping an 8-year-old girl and killing his wife is found dead. Police say Tatum killed himself in the same park where they've been searching for Ralisha Rudd for the last 5 days.
Subsequently they dragged the Anacostia River near D.C. General. When they started tearing down D.C. General, they started unearthing parts of the building that hadn't been searched before, so that there were more searches. So months and even years after her initial disappearance, police were still conducting active searches whenever they got a tip or they had reason to believe that they might be able to find what they ultimately thought would have been her remains. But in the end, they never found any sign of the young girl who remains missing to this day.
Social workers were aware of problems with Ralisha Rudd and her family well before the 8-year-old girl was reported missing to police. Rudd and her 28-year-old mother had been living in the homeless shelter at the old D.C. General Hospital for 18 months, along with Rudd's 3 younger brothers. While the 8-year-old girl stopped showing last month, sources say the boys had been attending school. Multiple sources tell News 4 DC Child and Family Services had an active case working when the girl went missing, and 3 prior cases dating back to 2007. Those previous incidents found by Child and Family Services included a lack of food, insufficient shelter, medical neglect, inadequate supervision, and at least 1 report of the mother hitting one of her sons. Despite all those reports over the past 7 years, authorities never removed the children from their mother's custody until now. The 3 boys are now in the care of CFSA.
One of the interesting things about Ralisha's story is that so much of it is cyclical. So her grandmother experienced trauma, her mother experienced trauma, her stepfather experienced trauma. You know, when Ralisha's mother was growing up, she faced homelessness and lived in a shelter with her mother and her siblings. At one point, she entered the foster care system and was taken away from her mother. And, you know, research shows that that has a really huge impact. She dealt with behavioral issues and mental health issues. And then, you know, she grew up, started a family of her own, and experienced the same instances, you know, living in a homeless shelter, being evicted, you know, dealing with her children and trying to wrangle them. And it was a lot. It was a lot.
And this is a picture that Ralisha painted in our playtime program. We were doing an art project, and this is what she painted, and I keep it above my desk so I remember and think about her every day. It's like she's right here with me to make sure that I'm fighting as hard as I can for children like her. Ralisha was in Playtime's program for 18 months, and our staff and volunteers worked very closely with her during that time.
Playtime was cool, man. You know, they took to Ralisha kind of quick too. You know, not only Ralisha, all my kids, you know. Ralisha liked to make beads and bracelets out of bead sets they used to have at Playtime. So she liked to color and draw and make things.
When we learned that she was gone, it was the most devastating news that I think any of us had ever heard, and it was a very, very scary time.
I think that we just all need to think about Ralisha as if she were our baby and bring her home.
The vigil was organized by the Homeless Children's Playtime Project.
We threw ourselves into the search as much as possible, which is never something that you're ever prepared to do as a service provider and a child advocate, to look for one of your own, so to speak, a child in your program. Combing through the woods with the FBI, Metropolitan Police Department, volunteers with Black and Missing, volunteers from Playtime, and seeing our staff and volunteers that had worked with Ralisha doing joyful, age-appropriate activities in our playrooms, then like somberly combing the Kenilworth Aquatic Garden park for evidence was an experience I hope to never repeat.
We just really, please, we just want to bring Ralisha home. And Ralisha, if you are watching this, we miss you and we love you.
About the same time that this was happening, DC police started releasing the names of missing persons, missing children, in a different manner. And it made the public and the press think that there were all these children who were missing all of a sudden, when in fact, prior to Ralisha Rudd, police had not been making public notifications about missing children as frequently on social media as they did after that.
Today, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser closed the door at D.C. General for the very final time. News 4 was the only TV station there when the mayor chained the door shut today. Mark Seagraves is live to tell us what's next for the families who used to call that place home. Mark?
Yeah, Jim, this building has been here since 1922, serving as a hospital until 2001, and since then, a homeless shelter. You can see now the doors are chained locked.
We as a city have said we don't want to lose another child.
DC General would have been a perfect setting for a scary movie. This is when children had no playground or safe place to play. right outside DC General on the concrete next to the road.
We spent 9 years serving children there. Different floors were opened and kind of haphazardly renovated to be outfitted to become a family shelter. So we did the very best we could to really fill that hole and fill that void of lack of children's programming, all the while trying to advocate for improving conditions at the shelter.
It's a massive building on a huge campus right on the Anacostia River, right across from RFK Stadium and the DC Armory. And the district had a need for places to house homeless families. Even back then, the district was in a homeless crisis, people experiencing homelessness. And there was a need to have a place to put families. They had been putting families in hotels out on New York Avenue at the cost of millions and millions of dollars a year. There were calls to close the shelter down. When Mayor Bowser became mayor, and I believe it was 2016, she announced plans to phase out DC General as a family homeless shelter and create family shelters, brand new facilities, one in each ward of the district. And that set off a firestorm of controversy with a lot of residents who just did not want a homeless shelter in their neighborhood. Ultimately, in 2018, the shelter was closed down, and those family shelters in all 8 wards opened up, and the sky did not fall. Neighborhoods were not destroyed or ruined because of these shelters, and in fact, they're operating pretty seamlessly today.
The new ward-based shelters are much smaller and did not have the same kind of program space that we were accustomed to at DC General, so we weren't able to fit in to most of them.
A through Z on these 3 sheets of paper.
We definitely are still worried about a lot of our families, even as we try to meet them where they are in schools and communities and low-income housing complexes. We're doing our very best to pivot and serve families beyond the shelter doors and beyond their homelessness experience. So we're doing the best we can, and are honored to continue to serve throughout DC and Prince George's County, where we moved 2 years ago.
Well, for the most part, I've been without housing through the whole time. You know, the system didn't help me, Child and Family Services didn't help me with nothing. I did everything on my own. I've been in my apartment now for 2 years on my own. I've been working at my job and working there for 2 years on my own. I always had a job, but I never had a home. Now that I got my home, I got my kids back. Not fully, but we're on the right track.
Government agencies charged with protecting at-risk families failed to communicate with one another and failed to report known incidents of neglect and chronic truancy. Those were the findings 5 years ago after Benita Jacks murdered her 3 children. The same government failures were found to have occurred in those same agencies who were supposed to be monitoring Ralisha Rudd.
Government agencies could have responded better. For example, I'm concerned about the mandatory reporting requirements and the fact that the report notes there were mandatory reporters who didn't report because they thought that CFSA already knew.
You know, whether those recommendations after the Ralisha Rudd investigation actually, prevented any future Ralisha Rudds, we don't know. What they found was, when it came to Ralisha Rudd, even if these recommendations had been in place, it may not have prevented her disappearance, and they point to a lot of the misinformation that the family gave to authorities before the investigation started, when she was just missing school, and then after the investigation started, that was given.
Ralisha Rudd, born October 29th, 2005, in Washington. She disappeared March 1st, 2014. She was an 8-year girl who went missing in Washington, D.C. on February 2014 and has not been found. Rudd had been living in D.C. General Shelter with her mother when she befriended the janitor Tyleal Tatum, a former felon. Rudd stopped attending school, and it was 30 days before Ralisha's absence was reported to police. Investigators revealed that the last sighting of her had been weeks prior when she was caught on camera with Tatum at an area hotel. Tatum's wife was found shot dead in a hotel in Prince George County in Maryland in mid March. And at the end of March, searchers found Tatum's body in a shed in the Killingworth Park and Aquatic Gardens, shot in apparent suicide. The case of Ralisha Rudd received very little coverage outside of the Washington, D.C. area, leading to criticism of her case received little attention due to her marginalization as a black girl from an impoverished family. In 2014, Ralisha Rudd was living with her mother, Shamika Young, at a D.C. general shelter. Khalil Tatum was a 50-year-old janitor at the shelter and had a felony record for burglary, larceny, and breaking and entry. Tatum was imprisoned from 1933 to 2003 and again from 2004 to 2011. Damn, he must love jail. He was hired as a shelter janitor by the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness, a contractor which operated the D.C. General Shelter and reportedly other city homeless programs. Tatum was known for inappropriately fraternizing with shelter residents and for paying particular attention to young girls. Tatum befriended Young, brought her daughter a tablet, and took her to see Disney on Ice. What? You Eventually, Shamika allowed Tatum to take the girl away overnight, allegedly to stay with him and his granddaughter. You, Shamika, let your daughter go off with a man you barely know to Disney on Ice. Okay. And then you let him take her overnight. This is your fault. This whole disappearance is your fault. Like, why didn't they charge you with something? You did this to your own child. Ralisha suddenly stopped attending school in February, but her grandmother, Melissa Young, provided a note saying that she was having health problems and was in the care of Dr. Tatum. The school contracted Tatum at the number provided, but when he failed to show up for a meeting with them, a counselor contacted the police to report Ralisha missing. Why is the school? Why? See, this is why I think the mother has something to do with this, because why didn't she report her daughter missing if she didn't come back overnight? Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia launched a missing persons probe March 19th, by which point Ralisha had not been in school for a month. The investigation revealed that Tatum and Ralisha had been caught on camera walking down a hallway in a Holiday Inn Express in Northeast Washington, D.C. on February 26th. The footage on March 1st showed her walking with Tatum to a room in a Days Inn on New York Avenue in D.C. The March 1st footage proved to be the last proof that Ralisha was still alive. Tatum's wife, Andrea, was found shot in the head in a motel in Prince George County, Maryland, on the same day Ralisha was reported missing, March 20th. This is a damn shame. Surveillance tapes showed Andrea and Khalil Tatum entering the hotel room the night before. Khalil Tatum was last seen March 2nd, the day after Ralisha was last seen, while buying a shovel, lime, and 42-gallon trash bags. DC police obtained an arrest warrant for Khalil Tatum in his wife's murder, but on March 31st, Tatum's body was found in a shed in Kenilworth Park of apparent suicide in the same gun that killed his wife. Yo, I think he he hurt that baby, and I honestly think he killed the baby and hid her body or whatever because Lord have mercy. So there are theories to this case. So here are the theories that are out there. There are a limited number of theories for what happened to Ralisha, given Tatum's behavior, the murder-suicide shortly after her disappearance. Authorities generally believe that Ralisha was either murdered by Tatum or sold by her mother, Shamika, and stepfather, Antonio Wheeler, for sex trafficking crime organization. Although the sex trafficking theory has been ruled out by D.C. Metropolitan Police detectives, there are also theories from the stepfather and other relatives that Ralisha is still alive since her body was never found. In an interview with the Washington Post, a senior law enforcement official suspected that Tatum had been sexually exploiting Ralisha, possibly pimping her to others, and may have killed his wife due to her finding out about his activities. Another theory is that Ricky Sheridan, Lyle Sr., who was Tatum's brother-in-law, might have been involved and could have killed Tatum. Lyles was questioned and ruled out a person of interest. You guys, what the fuck? I I think one of those theories that Shamika had something to do with it, because why would you just give your damn daughter to a fucking random ass man just because he took her to Disney on Ice? And you believe, oh, he brought her back. That was just to gain your trust. Like, you're that baby's protector. Hold on, y'all. I'm putting my baby to sleep. It has been 11 years yesterday that this girl has been missing. And when I read that article, they did yesterday, or I think, yeah, yesterday. I did not see the mother's name nowhere in that article. Only the grandmother. She says, I have been missing my granddaughter. She was my best friend. And I have not gave up looking for it. It did not mention Shamika's name at all. That's my theory that she did do this. She wanted to give her daughter up. And I read in another article last night that CPS was involved because they said that the house had no furniture, there was no food, and whatever. So I'm like, okay. They didn't mention nothing about the husband, ironically. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I know you have to move on in life and you have to be happy in life, whatever, but the question is, why would you do that? Like, you didn't even call to see if your daughter was okay, to speak to her on the phone, like you did none of that. But you want fucking sympathy, bitch. Fuck off. Like, you need to be in handcuffs. And I bet you be spilling all the fucking tea. Bitch. Dusty ass.